podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. I am your host, Max Mosier, of the 6 rotating cast members of this show. Today I have a special guest all the way from California, dear friend of the show and the host of The Christian Nerd. It is Scott Higa. Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing wonderful here in sunny Southern California. Excited to be on literally one of my favorite podcasts. I am a patron. You guys should be patreon.com/The Infinity Bros. If that's you'll find it. But I love the show. I've loved it since the beginning. And I'm not just a sometimes fill-in person. I'm also a listener. So I listen all the time. Love you guys. Love your show. Love it all. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Do you consider yourself a shill for the Infinity Bros podcast?
I think so. Here's the problem. Like, my shilling has gone down quite a bit because I'm off of social media a lot. Not because I Lent or anything, but just because Twitter removed third-party apps and I can't stand the Twitter official app. So I'm just on Twitter a lot less, and I love interacting with guys on Twitter. And I don't really know how to promote you on Instagram very well because I'm an old person. So when Robbie posts all of his videos, sun's out, guns out, Robbie's making a video.
Robbie.
It's like, do I add that to my stories? I'm not entirely sure I do that. Also, sometimes Robbie has horrible takes that I don't want to promote.
I don't blame you.
So, but he's been crushing those videos. I appreciate them.
I don't think any of us have a posture of universally great takes. I think all of us have at least one bad take.
At least, yeah. No, I'd probably some of you have one.
It's honestly more than one.
Some of you have one good take. Like yours, Max, is that you like the Captain Marvel movie. Outside of that,
that is so true. That is so. Oh gosh, that's good. The only podcast that's never right except once in a while.
You guys are worse than a broken clock. You can't even get it right twice a day.
We literally are. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
But I will say, though, there are a few podcasts that get me to shout at my phone as fervently as yours does when you say something that I don't agree with, which is why you should listen to a podcast. And I think what I like about you guys is that you're not, I don't watch any of those morning talk shows on ESPN with Skip Bayless and because they're idiots. They just say stupid things and they think they're right. You guys say what you feel, but I could be wrong. It doesn't matter. Right? You're not so you're not so obsessed with your own takes that you think anybody else who doesn't agree with them is wrong. You're just that's probably it. So that's what I appreciate about the Infinity.
Sure,
Bros.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you too, Scott. So check out The Christian Nerd if that's your jam. If not, then block him.
Yeah, just block me.
Yeah, don't listen. Whatever.
Yeah,
I don't care. You're listening.
No one's making you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, no one's making you listen. You don't have to listen anymore.
The only thing you have to listen to is the sound of your own thoughts in your head. And maybe you should get a therapist. That's why you don't want to listen to quality content.
Let's stay away from the voices inside Scott's head. And let's head over to the review of this episode. You're here today to listen to our spoiler review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. This is written and directed by James Gunn, stars Chris Pratt, Chikwudi Awuji. I did it. I've been worried about that name for 3 years.
You're totally going to screw up like Dave Bautista or something now. It's like in Bradley Copper. Gosh dang it!
Palm Clemente, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Vin Diesel. I don't owe any more names. Maria Bakalova, I owe her that name. Sean Gunn and Will Poulter. I want to make sure I get him too. Will Poulter. This is now 33 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's up to 33?
33 now.
Lord, yep. That's a lot of movies.
Released early May 2023. It has a runtime of 2 hours and 30 minutes, and we are going to be reviewing this thing top to bottom. But here's what we're going to do first. We're going to explain our rating system and put that bumper right here so you know how we rate things on this show.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
And then we're going to go ahead and give the non-spoiler review. So if there are people that are curious about checking this out but don't want to be spoiled, we want to make sure we give them an opportunity to hear this. So, Scott, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Give us your broad strokes rating of this movie without spoiling anything. and feel free to talk about it as much as you like. Just please, no spoilers. Go ahead.
Broad stroke rating. If you enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and you enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I cannot imagine why you would not enjoy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's a little more emotional. It's a little heavier, I think, as probably the trailers have communicated. But it's the same humor, the same action, the same characters that I think we've grown to love even more over almost 10 years of seeing them in these movies and Infinity War and Endgame and Thor: Love and Thunder. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I think that it was a very fitting ending to the story that James Gunn wanted to tell. So yeah, I really liked it.
Love it. What's your rating?
I would give it a 5 out of 6 on the Infinity Bro scale. Yeah.
5 out of 6 from Scott. I'm going to go ahead and preface all of this by saying Scott hates when people deal in absolutes of best and worst. So I know I'm about to say some best and worst things here. I got the opportunity to see this twice. I got to see it Thursday and then Saturday night. And I haven't had a bigger emotional experience in a Marvel movie. And I felt like Endgame was one of the biggest emotional experiences I've ever had. And I never thought that emotional experience of Endgame could be topped. And it was topped twice.
Wow.
I cried at the same exact beats both times in both theaters. I cried multiple times. I've never cried more than once in a Marvel movie. James Gunn, in my opinion, has a trilogy here that is unbelievable. And this is not the best Marvel movie ever made, but it certainly is the darkest and most emotional. And I believe everybody who likes Marvel, not loves, likes, should see this movie. I really, really enjoy it. We'll talk about kind of some things in the movie later that there's a couple things I have nitpicks on. There's also a couple. I have a really, really strong frustration with how people are speaking about this movie, and I'll talk about that later.
I love hearing Max yelling at the internet.
young
Young-ish man yells at the internet. It's the best.
It's to me that I will direct my feedback to the critics because I think they are leading. I think they're leading people astray. I don't think they're giving people the full context of this one. And the full context is you're signing up for an emotional ride that if you nailed this, Scott, if you have walked alongside these characters through the Guardians movies, Infinity War Endgame, the holiday special, and Thor Love and Thunder, then this is a must watch. Yeah. It's a non-negotiable. Yeah. And you will be rewarded for lines in every single one of those movies. You'll be rewarded for decisions made in every single one of those movies. And this is what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is all about, this movie. So this felt like watching old Marvel all over again, which was great. So I'm giving it a 6 out of 6.
Whoa!
This is one of my favorite Marvel movies ever made.
Dang it. Had I given it a 6, we could have Infinity snapped it. Actually, you're the only official bro on this podcast. So
you're the guy that brought it down.
By a technicality, all the Infinity Bros on this podcast gave it a 6. So Infinity snapped that ish. It's okay.
I can also confirm I don't have a rating for him, but I don't have like a synopsis, but I do have a rating from Jared of 6. So him and I both shared a lot of the same similarities here, and there's some really heavy stuff we're going to talk about. So we're going to pause on here now. If you are going to listen from this point on, this will be a completely spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the movie, I'm going to ask you to pause, come back later, and check this review out. This is your spoiler warning.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
When did you cry? Because I didn't I don't know if I'm dead on the inside, which might be the problem. Like I said, it's been a tough year for me, so maybe my emotional state's all over the place. Like we talked about in the pre-show, I cried at Dungeons and Dragons. I did not cry it. So when did you cry? And I'm not one of those man up and don't cry. I think crying is awesome and amazing. But when did you cry? I really want to know.
Yeah, so several times. And we'll talk about some of these scenes a little bit. The family dynamic in this is the best version of Guardians of the Galaxy in terms of talking about family, in my opinion. I think they really nail family systems in this. I think they really nail the black sheep and stupid person in this, Dave Bautista, as Drax. The animal cruelty stuff doesn't hit in that way for me. Yeah. What hits for me is when specific lines are said. So when the High Evolutionary is looking at Rocket and just in a very convoluted, very intelligent way of saying you are worthless to his face, that just was so dumbfounding to me. But also
that scene made me want to punch him in the face. Like that scene made him like this guy's way worse than Ego and Ronan the Accuser combined, because just the way he dismissed, it's like just laughing. Like, how could you expect to be like that? Was so that maybe I could have been like, I could have cried rage tears, but I was really mad at that moment.
Well, Nebula's response to Rocket being back.
Yeah, that was a good.
That hits home. I think here's a little peek behind the curtain for my audience. I have a very dear friend of mine passed away at the age of 17. And so there's this kind of feeling in this movie of kind of that stuff's popping up for me when I'm watching this. And I think for me, what makes Endgame so amazing is you work through the processing of all this pain. And in my job, I work with people that it takes a long time for me to learn about their pains. And so to basically find out in all these previous movies that James Gunn was strategically writing Rocket, where this movie would affirm and make scenes that are better, that to me is some really deep, profound art and some deep sequences that really touch my heart. But also, this is a really convoluted answer, and I know not everybody is a Christian, but for me, there's some really deep thematic things that are really hitting home for me in my faith and how I walk life. And I don't know if I can get into all that on this show because I don't want to hijack that with that message.
You can come on my show and talk about it.
Yeah, I'll do that on your show. I just think James Gunn wrote a masterpiece here. I really think he crushed it. And the animal stuff was brutal, but it wasn't what made me cry. It was the dynamics between all of them. It was Peter giving all he has to save Rocket. It's the dialogue of loss with him and Gamora, and he's talking to someone else. He's not talking to her. He's talking to someone else, and him wrestling with that. I just really appreciate that. And James Gunn is the best at being ridiculously emotional and then transitioning to unbelievably funny.
Yeah.
On a dime. I don't know how he does it so well. His directing is really incredible. Where were you pushed emotionally in this? Because I think that's the conversation in this movie.
Yeah, no, I think all the places you said, like, one of the saddest parts is when they first experiment on Rocket and they asked, does it words? Does it work? Like, I think Floor said, does it words or does it speaks? And he just says hurts. I'm like, oh my gosh. And like in Lylla, rubs him. Like that was really sad. But yeah, I was just emotionally invested in these characters. I think that's one of the things that why I wrestle with people comparing this to something like Shang-Chi or the Eternals, whether you like those movies or not. You're not going to be as invested in Shang-Chi, as great as that movie was, as I am in characters like we talked about, I've been walking with for a decade. I've seen Peter and Rocket and Gamora and Nebula and Drax, and I've seen them grow because I think James Gunn does a great job of developing these characters and having them have growth and potential, and then seeing it all pay off in this when we understand why. Like Rocket didn't have that much growth. He had all this. I just went back and watched the scene in Volume 2 when Yondu's yelling at Rocket and saying, "It's because you're me." That's an amazing scene. And Rocket, like, that's where Rocket changed. Like, he has his growth moment. But then we go into this movie, which is like, oh, there's not really much room for Rocket to grow because emotionally he's engaged, he's invested, he knows this is his family. But going back to see why he is the way that he was, that was a genius storytelling stroke that James Gunn had planned since the beginning. And it's really effective because Rocket's not in this movie a lot because most of the time he's on a table passed out. And so we had the benefit of seeing Rocket's like kind of the apex of his growth in Volume 2. And then he's taken out of it. We still get a lot of work with him from the flashbacks, but then there's still all this other stuff for all the other Guardians to work out because I think Rocket kind of had his moment in Volume 2. Then in Volume 3, there's, everybody else still has their own issues to work on. And I thought it was great. I mean, just seeing all these characters grow and change and develop. Nebula, Drax, Mantis. Mantis is unreal. Palm Clementif is spectacular. We'll get to all that. But yeah, I was just moved by all the growth and character development. And then I think that, like I followed James Gunn on social media for a long time. He seems like a genuinely decent person who really does care about other people. And I think that comes through social media. I think that came through his apologies when he was fired from Disney. He handled that really well. I think he cares about people. He loves people. He wants to be engaged in relationships. And for him to say, I am Rocket, well, you can see why he cares so deeply about all the people around him, because he went from a place of not caring about anybody at all, if his story mirrors Rocket's, which he says that it does. So I was just moved by, again, just being with these characters that we've been with for so long, seeing them in so many stages, so many ways that they've grown, and then even finding new ways, right, with new Gamora and Peter unpacking that. And so it was an emotionally moving experience because I care about these characters.
The scene in Endgame where Rocket is telling Thor, I lost the only family I've ever had. He's not talking about the Guardians.
Yeah.
And that's insane to me. And that's the level of writing that movie just got better. It is required to go back and watch now. I would love to watch that movie through the lens of Rocket grieving and going, not again. Like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. What happened the first time is happening again. Let's talk about specific characters. That's how we like to break things down on this show. We've kind of talked about Rocket. We've talked about his backstory. So you get Teefs, you get Floor, and you get Lylla. It is a Easter egg from the previous Guardians movie, the first one. That is one of his known associates. So in that scene where they're all introduced and Peter has the iconic middle finger scene, you can see Lylla's name and you can see his tag number from the High Evolutionary on that. If you go back, you can see that. This led some people to believe that Lylla was going to be out there alive, which I think is what makes her death a little more difficult if you're somebody that cared about. I didn't know she was on there.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
The movie.
Yeah.
Linda Cardellini comes back to play a very heavy emotional moment again for Lylla. What did you think of the CGI in this? What did you think of these animal portrayals? And do you agree with the critics on this animal cruelty is too much?
No, because they're CGI animals. They're not actually torturing real animals. Like, it's not a horse race where all the horses die. That's real life. And these are, I think, James Gunn posted that the first day of filming was with those animals because the post-production was going to take so long that they had to shoot those scenes first, because to get them, I thought it looked great, man. Like, if that's Victoria Alonso's last parting shot for the MCU, was to get those animals looking as good as they did and as emotionally invested in like them as even all the little raccoons running, but right, even all the other raccoons run away and Rocket's standing right there. It shows that he's different, that there's something about him that sets him apart. Like, that was great. But then that scene where they figure out their names and they're laughing, and it's that above shot where it looks like they're all together even though we know they're separated. That was such a great, like, that was one of my favorite moments in the entire movie. Because they're laughing and they're finding friendship, they're finding family, the thing that they never thought they would get, the thing that they didn't even know they wanted because they were animals living off of instinct, a year ago, and now here they can talk and engage and have feelings. I thought the animal stuff was great. I didn't cry when they all died because I knew they were going to, because they weren't around, and that makes a lot of sense why Rocket would be the way that he was. But I think that the heartbreaking thing was that he blamed himself for all those years, that his friends died because of him. That was the most heart-wrenching part, that he carried that burden when he did.
The scream from Bradley Cooper after Linda Cardellini's Lylla passes is some of the best CGI acting I've ever seen. And it's evident it's evident that Bradley Cooper took this up another notch. This is his best performance as Rocket.
Yeah, his vocal work on it is great.
You can tell he put a lot of work into this. I want to give credit to the voices as well. Michaela Hoover plays Floor, and Asim Chaudhry plays Teefs. So I want to make sure I give those two their credit. They were in mocap while
Sean Gunn does
Rocket. plays young Rocket, and Rocket is
he's always the Rocket, around. But he beating Sean Gunn, right? Like, he does such a great job of and that's what like that. I don't know if Sean Gunn and Bradley Cooper ever even met in real life, but the way that, I don't know how they do it, but like Sean Gunn's performance works so well with Bradley Cooper's voice, and his, like, vice versa. Like, that's always been great with Rocket. That I don't know how they accomplish that, because voice acting, like voiceover work, it's hard. Like, in a lot of the What If series, right? Not everyone was great at that because voice acting is entirely different. So for Bradley Cooper to be able to crush it like he has for this long as Rocket was really great.
What do you think of Mantis and Drax kind of coming back, and especially after the holiday special, it feels like James Gunn was very strategic in that relationship, making sure the audience is reminded, like, hey, this is the pairing. This is the pairing right here. They're both a little awkward. They're socially awkward. Their pasts are pain-filled, and it's drawn them to each other. We saw that in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. How did you feel about their relationship in this movie and the beats that they had to carry, which both are incredibly emotional, not just about each other, but about their own personal stories?
I think that I would sign up for Mantis and Drax like buddy cop show. Just, you know, that's basically what the holiday special was, and it was great. I think they work well together. I think, you know, for Mantis to be such an empathetic character who totally understands feelings and emotions, and Drax, as played by Dave Bautista, is just so deadpan and so just disassociated from emotions. Really, like he's just so like even right, that he doesn't get the metaphors and all that stuff. I think it's an amazing pairing. I think Pom Clementif and Dave Bautista work really well together. So yeah, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed their relationship, and you know that moment when Mantis like says that he's dumb, and Drax is like, "You think I'm dumb?" and how heartbroken she is in that moment, and thankfully she can go, "Hey, forget." But you know, just seeing how she doesn't want to pain him at all.
Dude, that's a scene that makes me cry. Just like there's some super deep, like, I feel like a lot of people are gonna see those scenes and go, "Yep."
And a lot of us are gonna be like, I wish I had that power that I could go back and right. We regret so many of the stupid things we say all the time. If I could go back and just say, man, forget that I said that. Forget that I was angry. I hadn't had enough to eat. I just listened to Max and Robbie talk about She-Hulk, and I was so angry. Like, right. Like I couldn't like help myself.
You didn't like She-Hulk?
No, I
love
She-Hulk. You know me. I'm a Mark.
Okay, good. I was going to say,
I'm
I love
a Mark.
She-Hulk.
I love everything.
Okay, fair enough. Except for
Mandalorian.
Karen Gillan, let's talk about her as Nebula. This was unexpected to me. I was not expecting her to be one of the main stakes of this. It's evident that Peter Quill takes a back seat in terms of lead. He's trying to lead in this, but he's so sidetracked by Gamora that he just struggles to do so. Whereas Nebula has this 5-year gap of Endgame that really allows her to, one, she's upgraded physically, she's upgraded emotionally, she's upgraded in terms of her voice. In the first couple of movies, she's just kind of sitting there in the back going, growling, kind of. And we see that dynamic with her and old Gamora. But Nebula really leads the charge emotionally in this, of just like airing the frustration of the tensions in the family, but also really, really being very empathetic to when Rocket, they're watching him get tortured, and she's just tearing up. And you know, when you're watching it, you're like, she's got to be most tight with Rocket because she spent 5 years trying to fix this Endgame problem with him. You know that she's so frustrated with them, but she loves them. She's never had people to love before. Her first time smiling probably ever was 5 years ago on that ship with Tony when they're playing paper football. I just think the journey that she takes in this, and that James Gunn, I walked out of the first time going, wow, Nebula really took the biggest journey and leap, I think, out of everybody here. And I really appreciate it, because that was a character that in the first movie I was like, whatever, she's fine, don't really care, don't really need her. And now I'm like, I really hope Karen Gillan calls him up and says, let's keep going. Like, I really hope she is one of those actors that says, I want to hang out a little more or come back in a future movie. What were your thoughts on?
I thought Karen Gillan's great. Shout out to Amy Pond. But like,
are you a Doctor Who fan?
Yeah. I'm not as up on it as I should be, because, you know, kids and life. But but I was really kind of taken aback. Like, that's the one like character level part that it didn't make sense. Like, why she was so mean to Drax and Mantis. Like, that part was really weird to me. That's the one part that doesn't really resonate, or it seems like it makes sense. Like, she was really, really just mean to them. And that's one, and you know, it led to a great scene where Mantis is like, oh, like, you just think we screw up and like you just want to get things done, which I get, but like it seemed out of character, because she had grown so much in her capacity for empathy and concern and caring about other people. So that just seemed a little off, actually, in the whole movie. Like, that's the one part that doesn't really stick, that sticks with me. It's like, that did not make that much sense to me.
Yeah, and I wonder if she's taking out her frustrations about other things happening on them. I mean, yeah, but
I hated the movie because of that. Just kidding. No, there's like it's the one thing where it's like everyone else, their relationships and how they're all interconnected makes sense. It's that felt a little off. Like why she chose to be so mad at those two and not Quill, who she carries his body and like tucks him into bed when he gets blackout drunk. Like she's not mad at him about that, but she's mad because Drax and Mantis screw around a little bit. That just seemed off.
Is it a weaker position kind of on the team? Kind of like Drax is obviously this big bulking guy, but systematically he's very low on the totem pole in terms of intelligence, whereas Mantis just kind of tagged along at the last movie and she kind of listens to everybody.
Yeah, but so did Nebula. Nebula tagged on at the end of the last movie too.
But Nebula brings value in terms of fighting compared to the other. Mantis, total aside, we didn't talk about this, but Mantis's power skill set was on display in a way that the other movies didn't even touch. I wish we could have seen what she did in this.
Yeah.
In Endgame.
I also liked when they had their spacesuits on and she was just jumping around because she was so happy. Like that was hilarious.
Yeah, and she's like falling on her
head.
Hilarious. Like it was James Gunn had her fall on her head 3 different times.
I thought, did Mantis die? Because she also
second time for sure. Yes, no doubt.
Totally expecting somebody to die, nobody did, which was crazy.
We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about that. I want characters, and we'll get to the big strokes here. Peter Quill, you talked about he gets drunk at the beginning. Some people have said that that's like a loose end that wasn't tied up. I want to speak to that. I think that is literally picking up from where Endgame left off. That's how I look at that scene. I'm looking at that scene, and this is where this movie really hits it home for me, Scott. One problem I've had post Endgame is I feel like these movies and characters are not giving justice to what happened in those movies. And not that we don't sit around and talk about COVID every day, but COVID is brought up in some way in passing every day by everybody, I think. And I think I would like to see Endgame referenced more. This movie referenced it in multiple different ways, in appropriate ways, not in forced ways. And hey, I'm making this decision because of this. And I feel like this movie did the best out of everything post Endgame at that. And I feel like James Gunn really, and James Gunn, this is an aside from the trivia part of it, but like James Gunn wanted to kill Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He didn't want her to die in Infinity War. Marvel had to talk them off the ship because that was the game plan. And then he did not. He has an interview recently with Chris Pratt, and he laughs. He goes, the Infinity War, or the Guardians of the Galaxy 1 scene with all of the stones and the explanation from the Collector, he wrote that in 90 minutes. And the whole MCU is built off of him just like, he's kind of laughing. He's like, I just wrote that in 90 minutes. Didn't really think that it would be like this huge consequence to everything down the line. And he's like, I totally was one of the first people to use an Infinity Stone, and basically they had to work off of my rules from that point on. So it was just interesting from the writing perspective to see that. So getting back to Peter Quill, I felt like this was a perfect way to arc what had happened at that movie and not force it. And I think you can't talk about Peter without talking about Gamora. I really, Scott, anticipated going into this. One expectation I had was that they would kiss at the end and that it would be like a reunion and then maybe they'd go off separate ways, but that there would be one scene. And we didn't even get that. And I really appreciate that James Gunn didn't do that. And I really appreciate that Peter grew in this, and that Peter, the sacrifice he makes in this versus the sacrifice he makes in the first one of jumping out of the plane of the ship is completely different. And the stakes are different and the emotions feel different because of that. What did you think of Peter's arc in this movie?
I like Chris Pratt. I know that's not the popular thing on the internet to say, but I think generally he just seems like a pretty goofy, decent guy who got super lucky and is just happy to live his life. And
he's aware of this.
Yeah, totally. It's totally self-aware. Just he was Andy Dwyer, and now he's one of the biggest movie stars in the world, which is awesome for him. But yeah, I think that especially Peter Quill's relationship with Gamora like set up so much of this movie, and I loved Gamora just basically telling like that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really powerful conversation. I think that really shook. I think Peter got shaken out a little bit after that and was able to like, okay, let's focus on Rocket, let's focus on all that other stuff, because I think he needed her to tell him, because I think there was always that hope in his head that something would work out and like, she'd come to like, I don't know, some way through the soul stone, like she'd get her memories back. And like, I think it was just holding out that hope. And so I think that, like when you break up with somebody, you kind of want that final conversation that he never got to have because his Gamora died. But with this version of Gamora, going to have that clear cut conversation. I am not that person. I will never be that person. Please stop letting me be that, wanting me to be that person. And I think that conversation allowed Peter to move on a little bit and then actually form somewhat of a relationship with that version of Gamora, which I'm glad didn't end in a kiss, but ended with them being like, okay, like you're not as much of a D as I thought you were.
I think Gamora was great in this. I really didn't know what her role was. And I've heard people say like she didn't do anything in this movie. And I've heard people say like she's just there. And I'm like, I don't process the way that she's in this. She is present as a reminder of what was lost, but also she's present to take care of some important plot things like all of stories do. But I really, really love that James Gunn, and you talked about this too, but just he did not cave. It would have been so easy to find a way for them to fall in love or have a kiss. Or like the scene where he saves her when Adam Warlock attacks. I think it would have been easy to do that. And they made a really great choice in not doing that. And I tip my hat to James Gunn. And this served Peter Quill's character and it served his future in this whole MCU.
And it served Gamora well too, because she was so convinced that she could not, like this version of Gamora was so convinced that she could not be a part of this team. Like that's where she was. And then she doesn't understand why they're not killing anybody. Like all these things that, our version of Gamora understands. Then she doesn't join them. She goes back off the Ravagers and she's really excited to be with the Ravagers. Like she's happy, she's smiling, she's loving it. But she totally, I think, maybe doesn't want to be part of that team, the Guardians, but she understands why she could be or how she could be. And I think that's huge to go from like, this is nothing I could ever be a part of. Like, oh, I could see how that could happen. I think that's a great arc for that Gamora. And I think Zoe Saldana does a great job of portraying a different Gamora, right? Because a grumpier one. Yeah, and so it's not even Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 version of Gamora, because that version of Gamora was totally opposed to Thanos, was willing to do anything to save the galaxy. This version of Gamora maybe was at that place, but then her life shifted, and now she's just a Ravager, and she got taken back to the past, and life is really weird for her. And so I thought she did a good job showing us a different version of Gamora.
Will Poulter, let's talk about Adam Warlock. Did you have high expectations for Adam Warlock going into this?
Not really, because I knew that the High Evolutionary was in it, so he's probably the main baddie. And I just wonder, how much of did it really change, or was this always the plan to have him kind of be a side character, a little bit of comic relief? I thought that was a good way of making him not as menacing or as intimidating or as powerful as he is in the comics, by saying you took him out of the oven too soon. Now he's kind of an idiot. Which
love that.
Will Poulter has a good, I'm kind of a dumb idiot look to his, he portrays that. I'm not saying he looks like that, but just the confused looks he gives were dead on. And then and
it fits in this world. Like it fits in the context of the Guardians corner. Like I think if he comes in with this noble persona that Adam Warlock has in the comics, I think that beat gets missed in this story. Another piece of feedback I've heard is that he's just kind of there too. I don't feel that as well. I think his arc was very intentionally set up. It was evident that they wanted him to be a Guardian at the end of this. I think they're forming in the Infinity Watch after this. I think one of the things that they're doing is Guardians of the Galaxy will be a thing for a little longer, but then there will be an overarching need with Celestials or whatever that they'll have to form an Infinity Watch. And I think Rocket will have to be part of that or go to the Avengers. It'll be one of those kinds of decisions for him and Bradley Cooper. But I think Will Poulter had to get introduced sooner or later as Adam Warlock. Like this has to happen. We can't just let him sit on the side to do this. I thought Will Poulter was great. I don't think anybody was bad in this. That's kind of what I'm saying. I don't think anybody was bad in this, Scott. I really don't.
Are we on to Ursula characters and go to broader things?
Well, let's go to High Evolutionary, then we can go to broad here. Chakudi Uji, do you think this is a villain that had to have a backstory of mom or dad not liking him in order to be bad, or did you appreciate that he was just evil through and through, and the more the movie went, the louder he got and the more evil he got?
I love people being evil for the sake of being evil. My favorite Disney live action remake is Cinderella, because they don't give Cate Blanchett's evil stepmother a backstory for why she's the way she is. She's just mean, and she doesn't like that Cinderella's young and pretty. And so just having the High Evolutionary be like a jerk who has like, right, he's got his motive. I'm trying to create a better universe. But I mean, what was the lines? Like, you weren't trying to create a better universe. What does Rocket say to him? Oh, you saw it twice.
You're trying to perfect it.
Yeah. Wow. It was
No, you were. Oh yeah. You weren't trying to create a better universe.
something like you were just trying to keep other people out of it. I don't know. Like,
you were trying to fix what you didn't like about it.
And that was great. And that's perfect. So like, he's just a bad guy with a bad motive. And then, he just gets evil, more evil and more evil. And then when he laughs at Rocket and says he doesn't have a place in Utopia, he was dead to me. And I'm glad they ripped his face off. And that was a little creepy. That was some good, that was a little squeamishy with his face.
Well, I'll talk to that makeup real quick. The makeup deserves an Oscar just for his face. The close-ups on his face were insane. We saw this first time in 3D. It looks great on the sides. Like, they worked their tails off behind the scenes to make this look good. I think it's Shikuyu Uji. This is the character I anticipated. Spoilers for Peacemaker, but in Peacemaker, you find out that his character is an alien in that show, and the character ends up being a good alien.
How do you have a spoiler warning when you're on the show? Like, what was I supposed to do? Just take out my headphones at that moment? Like, oh yeah, just say whatever you want about Peacemaker.
I don't know. Are you watching Peacemaker?
No,
Are you planning on watching Peacemaker?
At some point, but it's fine. I don't care.
That's fine. There you go.
I also know that the lady's husband in Watchmen is the blue dude, so it's okay.
Sure, yeah. That's a great show too. I can't believe I haven't watched.
Does he have pants on, or is it just like hanging out?
No, it hangs out. It's like the comic.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's. I wouldn't call it. I'm uncomfortable. Chikuyu Uji is the villain I anticipated him to be in Peacemaker. Please never do that again, Scott. And so I really appreciated that he got to show that range, because in Peacemaker he didn't do that. He was just more of comic relief to a really, really childish Peacemaker. And so I really appreciate. I agree with you. That's a great analogy. I won't add anything else. I just would say I agree with you. And I think my only issue with this character, and this is where we start getting to nitpicks and we start on the broader scale of things, is if he could just explode that area at the end of the movie, why was he not doing that when the Guardians were kicking his rear end? Like, that's an honest question I have. Is why, and this goes back to Kang in Quantumania, spoiler alert for that movie. Why can he do powerful things 1 minute and then the next minute he can't? I'm having a hard time with that, and I think Marvel really's got to be more consistent in this. Don't give them these overarching incredible powers just to not use them when it matters. And in that scene,
well, the High Evolutionaries were like suit based, and so they were like jacking up his suit, so he couldn't.
I didn't get that from him and Rocket. He had Rocket pinned up there, then Rocket does the boots, and then they shoot him up and punch him. I felt like,
I thought they were pretty intentional as showing that his suit was getting jacked up, and every time he used his powers, his suit glowed. So
maybe I was wrong.
That was my headcanon for filling in that plot hole. And I don't care about plot holes.
Then explain that a little better then. That's my feedback. I would like that explained a little better, so that way I don't have to come on this show and nitpick that and look like a big mouth breather, sweaty guy.
I can see Max right now, and he is neither sweaty nor breathing from his mouth.
I'm not sweaty at all. Actually, really comfortable. It's nice outside.
What's nice for you?
75 to 85.
Oh, that is nice.
Preferably 75. Like I'm talking like outside. Inside, I want it 68 to 72.
Sunny with a high of 75.
Okay, you were wanting to talk about something else. Go ahead and transition.
Oh, they made such a huge deal about the other Ravagers in Volume 2, and they were not in this very much as I thought they would be. That was kind of disappointing. And Michelle Yeoh wasn't there, which was a bummer.
Yeah, what was up with Michelle Yeoh not being there? Great point.
She went off.
That is a great point, Scott. What the heck's up with that?
She went off.
This is the year Michelle Yeoh.
I know, but yeah,
we really could have used her in this one.
She's the best at everything.
She literally is.
I know. So that was one thing where it's like, what happened? Like, and I think they fit in really well in Volume 2, and the Ravager funeral at the end of Volume 2 is one of my favorite scenes in the trilogy.
Chef's kiss, right?
But just they seemed like to have Sylvester Stallone, right? It just seemed like a little bit of a bit part that wasn't, you know, they could have found a reason for Gamora to get there other than that, but it was fine. That's my nitpicky on that.
This is the good and the bad you get with James Gunn, though, right? Like, I mean, as great as James Gunn is the emotional storytelling and at the hard conversations pivoting to really funny jokes, he's going to put his people in every single one of his properties. And it drives me nuts because his wife's there.
Yeah.
And it's like every time she's in a scene, it takes me out of it because I'm reminded of DC. I'm like, dude, she doesn't need to be in the scene.
Well,
what are we doing here?
She won't be in any more MCU movies.
And as a viewer that doesn't know anybody, it can be frustrating. Yeah. But as a person, I tip my hat to him that he's always got you kind of said this earlier. He strikes me as a guy who cares about his tribe. And those are people in his tribe. And
it seems to keep growing. Like, right. He doesn't seem like he's got four friends. Like, right. It was Nathan Fillion, Steve Agee, his brother, and Michael Rucker. But now it's Palm Clementif, it's Chris Pratt. It's like all these people that he's been adding over the years.
It's Batista now. Batista's for sure going to the DC
John
universe.
Cena, right?
He
seems, because he apparently has done the emotional work to be an emotionally healthy human being, his capacity to grow and love people is growing. His capacity to love people is growing. And so he keeps adding all these friends. So at some point when he makes a movie, it's literally like he can cast everybody that he likes because he just has so many friends, which is great.
Yeah, that's long-term not a good thing for movies like Superman, but we'll see.
So I didn't, the Ravager stuff was all right. I thought I was crying laughing when Nebula was trying to open the car door.
Oh my word.
They made use of their one F-bomb very well. That was so funny. That was unreal. I was dying.
And that was an ad-lib scene. That was not
was
the script.
It?
Ad-lib scene.
Oh my gosh. That was really like way to make the use of your one F word there. Made the most of it. And anything else right off the top? Let me tell me what you thought. And then if you have any more random thoughts, I'll see. I wrote some down. So let me see if I got anything else.
Yeah, no, I think for me, the other nitpicks and things I say about this movie that were frustrating. I'm frustrated that we didn't get a epilogue of Rocket meeting Groot. I think that was a huge miss here. My gut tells me we will get that answer down the line with another Guardians movie. I have a difficult time seeing how that happens though without James Gunn helming it.
Yeah.
I loved Cosmo.
Oh, that's right. Cosmo.
I loved Cosmo's bit of a good bad dog with Kraglin was so funny. That's an example of every single emotional beat was sad, and then they would go to that scene, and that just would cheer me up and bring me right back into it. And I really I think some people might watch it and go, "It was done too much." No, I feel like it was the perfect appropriate amount. Then to peak where Kraglin uses the ability that Yondu gave him. Oh my gosh, that was earned. That was years in the making. That was a years in the making decision. Guardians 2 was a long time
when
ago.
Adam Warlock attacks nowhere and he tries using it, it just like bounces off of him. And it's like, who did that? Like that was great. Like that was hilarious. It moved Kraglin's, like it showed us about Kraglin, but it was also very, very funny.
I agree. And I think to bring Yondu back was a stroke of genius. Obviously, another reason for James Gunn to bring a buddy back into a movie. I also really liked that Adam Warlock kicked the crap out of everybody at the beginning.
Yeah.
I think it showed that they weren't as powerful as they thought they were. It's a great storytelling device when you can take away everything from somebody. I thought the Nowhere stuff was really good. You get the big CGI third act fight, but I think you had to have it. I think you had to have it in this one in order to advance what they did. And I love that Marvel continues to make an emphasis. I'm sure it's a law. I'm sure they've got some rule that like every Marvel movie, you have to save people. And they're saving kids. They're saving the animals. I really like that. I really appreciate that. And in this one, it's like over the top with like the Noah's Ark kind of look. It's just comical, but I love it, and I'm here
like
for it.
We go to superhero movies to see people being heroic and saving a ship full of kids and animals. That's super heroic. I am for that every time, over and over again. And that's what I like about like the third one of these movies, right? Is like they don't have to become heroes; they are already heroes, which is a fun part about a trilogy, right? Of seeing this end, and that's what I really like. Captain America: The First Avenger is because Steve doesn't have to become a hero. He's already a hero. He just needs the body. Whereas you look at the origin stories for Thor and Iron Man, like it's shifted. Like they have the tools to be a hero. They need to have the heart. Steve was always a hero. He just needed the body to match his heart, which I think.
And this is why Thor is kind of mid now, because Thor continues to deteriorate, it feels like, as a power set of a character when he doesn't need to. And it's kind of the same problem CW's Flash has. It's like you can't have a character that OP without writing some emotional traumas in their story. I don't know. I think it's kind of how it works. No, I think Kraglin was really good in this. And I think the Cosmo was just a very big surprise. I really liked the ending with Groot and the I love you guys. And that was, according to James Gunn, he has confirmed this. That was for the audience to finally be able to understand him. It's like we're Gamora in that scene. So I really like that. And
we spend enough time with his character that we understand his language.
Yep, we understand his language now. And it's like, I really liked that. Thought it was a good pivot from We Are Groot in the first movie. And yeah, I really appreciated Groot's arc as well. Groot's always great to be in the background. He doesn't have to do anything past look really cool and hand guns off and be part of the hallway fight. The hallway fight, did you where would you rank that in terms of Marvel fights? Because this is, for me, one of the better ones.
Wherever I rank the cathedral fight from Age of Ultron, that's where I'd rank this fight, because they're the same thing in my head.
No, they're not, Scott. Stop this.
Yeah, I don't say that as a bad thing. I say it as a great thing. It just gave me the same vibes, right? It's the camera. They're all trying to dance around doing the same. It was awesome. I loved it. Had Beastie Boys. Great call. But, right, like, it just gave me the same vibe, which is not a bad thing. That fight in Age of Ultron is great. You get a little more kind of like close-ups on the Avengers in Age of Ultron than you do in the hallway scene, but it's the same idea of just we're panning around, everybody's working in concert together, which is great. I loved it. I would rate that action scene 6 out of 6. I thought it was awesome. But it gave me Age of Ultron vibes, which is not a bad thing, because I like Age of Ultron.
No Sleep Till Brooklyn was the best song in the whole movie.
Nah.
It was the best.
Dude, they really crushed it with Florence and the Machine at the end.
Yeah, that was good too. And with Creep at the beginning too. Did you think that, where would you rank the soundtracks?
So,
like, do you think this was better than the second or first one?
Apparently it's not available on Apple Music. I use Apple Music. Sorry, I'm not young. I don't use Spotify. So I can't I could make the playlist myself. I'm like, I'll just go. Part of me is like, I'm just going to go to Target and buy the CD, because I have a CD player in my car. Again, I'm old. But there were some standouts, but I don't know, because I very often people ask me like, oh, how'd you like that movie? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's really hard to judge this movie with ones that I've sat with for a long time. I think even more so with the awesome mixes, because that first one I listened to over and over and over again, and it introduced so many songs that I'd never heard before. So I'd really have to sit and listen to the album to really know how I feel. But I think the first one was better than the second one.
Here's how I know it's already a good one is I coach track and field, and so we have our throwers, and we're next to the field house where lacrosse is getting ready for a game, and they're blasting music. They were blasting the Beastie Boys song.
Yeah.
Hadn't heard anything other than pop I hadn't heard anything but 2000s music all year. First time I've heard anything before the 2000s.
It's a good song too, man.
It's a great song. It was awesome. It was, yeah. It's amazing how James Gunn did it.
There was a video of Florence from Florence and the Machine watching that scene. It was really great. She was all just tearing up.
How'd they feel about it?
She loved. I mean, she was crying. Like it's beautiful. Like it's a beautiful. Like, yeah, man, they nailed that song. They nailed that song choice. And then, like, at the end where there's just the beats and it's hitting, and then I know it's going to build up again, and they'll just start dancing around.
Yeah.
The ending was really good.
The ending was really good. One more thing. Do you think it takes away from the emotion of this movie to not kill somebody?
No, because I think that's an easy way out to make something emotional. I think creating the level of emotional tension that James Gunn did without killing somebody is a lot harder to do. He
centered around almost killing people, though. He almost killed Rocket. He almost killed Peter at the end.
Yeah. But
you can make an argument everybody almost died at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, but the emotional heavy lifting of the relationships, I think it's much harder to to delve those relationships for emotional impact than it is a death. So I think that, yeah, people almost dying. But that's the thing too. Every time somebody almost died, I thought, oh, is this it? Is this person dying? Which I kind of like going into a movie. Like I thought Mantis died when she just fell on her head. I'm like, oh, that's a really weird to make the Guardian or I thought Drax was gonna die. I'm like, oh, that was really sudden. Like,
well, and it's not that I guess I'm more asking, like, did Marvel say you can't do it? Because like he's not afraid to kill people. He's made that pretty clear. I don't know. I would have really I walked out of this kind of going, I really would have liked if Peter would have died. Because that's the one that of everybody I wouldn't have thought was going to die going into it. So I feel like that would have been a really, really clever way to do it.
I thought Rocket was going to die for sure. Like that was like I was.
Oh, everyone did. That's what I'm saying.
But yeah, so I was surprised.
And Batista. I think everybody thought Batista was going to die because he's the most vocal about not going to come back. But Zoe Saldana doesn't. She doesn't want to come back. She made it very clear this is the last one.
Well, she
like,
stopped being a Ravager. But everyone says that until, Papa Feige's like, do you want to come back for $20 million?
I agree. Until it's, Avengers, everybody comes back for this one, 7,
Yeah. So no, I was fine with nobody dying. I thought emotionally there was enough heavy lifting and things other than people dying.
I did, with the Peter thing at the end, I did think that was nice full circle from the first movie.
Yeah.
And I think the painting with the 2 fingers, forgive me, I'm not remembering the painting or the artist's name, but I know that was a reference to that. I thought that was obviously great imagery. I know a lot of people are struck by that.
The newspaper with Kevin Bacon talking about his alien abduction.
Oh, so good.
So funny.
So good. Well, you're leaning into kind of my next point is with that ending, did you feel that was satisfactory for how this trilogy started?
Yeah, I think so. It ends up Peter's back on Earth with his grandpa. Like it sort of comes full circle. So yeah, I like
of all the Guardians characters to come back. Do you feel like it's okay that Peter comes back? What more do they have to tell with his story, in your opinion?
I think there's a lot you can do. So if there's a legendary Star-Lord movie, like if Chris Pratt is like headlining his own movie, I think there's a lot there because, he's figured out what it means to be a hero with a team, with his family around him. So what's it look like to do that when you're back in unknown areas? Nobody knows who he is. I think James Gunn said that people on Earth are unaware of who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. So I think there's a lot there to try to, once again, figure out who he is without his family around him, family being the Guardian. So I think you can do some stuff there.
Here's my theory, and I talked about this earlier. I have a theory right now that Chris Pratt is going to be in Secret Invasion. And I have no evidence of this, but I have a theory that Chris Pratt is going to be in this, and that the reason Chris Pratt will be in it is because Don Cheadle will be discovered to be a Skrull, and Nick Fury will have to turn to somebody he can trust, and he knows that Chris Pratt's character is an unknown, and that he just got there. And I feel like that might be a great, clever way to, one, give Chris Pratt a great, serious role within the context of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but someone else has to know about these Skrulls that's not Captain Marvel. Nick Fury can be that person, but it would be really great to have somebody like Star-Lord be the messenger where everybody's like, you're who? I'm legendary Star-Lord. Like, I think there would just be some really cool things. And maybe that's not at the beginning of Secret Invasion, because I know he doesn't necessarily match the tone of what I think they're trying to go for that show. But it would not surprise me if episode 6, Chris Pratt's Star-Lord is introduced, or the ending of episode 6 is Nick Fury knocking on that door and saying, we need to talk. That would be a really cool way to bring him into the fold, but also kind of do some of the storytelling you're talking about.
It is not an Infinity Bros episode until there's Skrull speculation. Just
Skrull watch. Baby.
I'm glad that, we've gone an hour. I'm glad that it finally popped up. Like, I feel like I got the full experience of being on the Infinity Bros podcast.
That's my crackpot theory, and I'm sticking to it. So,
what happens if it doesn't come true? Will you be disappointed? And
no, I wouldn't be disappointed in that one. I just feel like that would be
why
great.
Why don't you like Secret Invasion? Because it didn't have my stupid theory come true.
Well, that would just be a crazy curveball that I feel like would really, really push the genre, but also, I don't even think you have to do it at the beginning. I think they could do it at the end. I think it'd be a great way to continue the story. And that's Chris Pratt's job now on Earth.
Find Skrulls
and be part of that process. And then that gets him back in the galaxy, kind of reconnecting. I don't know. I just feel like I'm trying to wrap my head around what his job is from this point on. And I appreciate your perspective of hey, a solo movie, let's remove everything else and put him on Earth. What does that look like? I think that's a good idea. Even then, that doesn't excite me, if I'm being honest.
I've never read any Star-Lord comics, so I'll go and see what the source material they're working from.
It's just strange that he's the one coming back, but I know Chris Pratt pretty much says yes to anything. So
because he's just happy. He's just living his life, being happy, being married to Arnold Schwarzenegger's daughter, just loving his life.
Living the dream. Well, you can check out Scott on the Christian Nerd podcast. Any other spaces you want us to send people your way, Scott?
Nah, that's about it. Just go to thechristiannerd.com or search The Christian Nerd in your favorite podcasting app.
Don't go to your favorite podcasting app for us. Go to your least favorite one.
Yeah, the one that you never look at. My show's a lot like this, except I just tell everything.
Scott typically starts the first 10 minutes off. It's a therapy session.
Yeah, you know, I started a podcast because therapy is expensive, and $20 a month to Libsyn is cheaper than therapy.
We appreciate you, Scott. We consider the Christian Nerd our guardians of the galaxy of the Infinity Bros universe. So that's what we do. If you enjoyed us, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Discord, all that stuff. There's a link in the show notes you want to check out. We'll also include a link to Scott's stuff too if you don't want to go searching for it. And we'd love to know what your thoughts are on this movie. What's your rating of it? What do you think is going to happen moving forward? Do you foresee the Guardians returning in a future movie? We'd love for you to answer those questions. And you can check out what we talked about in the Patreon, where we talked about our thoughts on the Fantastic Four current rumors of who's going to be in that movie. We talk about WandaVision and the fact that it's that the Doctor Strange 2 writers didn't know about anything about that show, and we kind of give my feedback on that. Spoiler alert, I didn't like it. And what else did we talk about? We embarrassed Zane and Vinny Bro Zane. Scott, you know, how much therapy do you think you did in that time?
I was just pretty clear. I'm just going to say, though, that you should be a patron, because basically every time there's an Infinity Bros episode and you're a patron, you get 2 episodes a week, basically.
That's a good point.
Because
you get 2
it's
for the price of
it's
one.
not like, oh yeah, here's 12 seconds of content. It's basically a whole nother episode, and a little more unhinged, which is always enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And I don't think I'm the unhinged one, but I think the others are.
So yeah, so be a patron of the Infinity Bros podcast.
Scott, thanks for coming on. We loved having you, buddy, and we will see you soon, very, very soon, I know. And thank you, Infinity Bros Universe, wherever you listened, however you listen. Thanks for making us part of your podcast experience. As always, we love you guys 3000, and we'll see you soon. See ya. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.